Today we're going to go ahead and start tearing into the truck. Thing sounds like it has a supercharger on it, but go ahead, pop the hood, no supercharger to be found. That implies there's a problem. Usually what that is it implies that it needs a timing job done on it. So we're going to go ahead and start tearing into that. This may end up turning into a multi-part series. I'm not really sure because I want to go ahead and cover some of the finer points that I found important that need to be covered. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, first things we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and take the air intake tube that connects the throttle body to the air filter. It's only a couple of worm clamps or hose clamps if you like to call them that. Next, we got to take the 4 cap head screws off of the throttle body in order to get the throttle body out of the way. We see something in there, we're going to cover that in a second here. Also, for safety's sake, how about we go ahead and take the battery out first? Yeah. Okay, so just pulled the intake tube off. I don't know what the heck all that crap is, but we're going to have to clean that. And over here, the hose wasn't even on all the way. I don't know what those idiots were doing, but yeah. So this is what I found so far. So moving on. All right, next, before we get this thing opened up too far, let's go ahead and take an air hose and blow all the dirt, debris, leaves, whatever's on the top of that engine off. So we're going to go ahead now, try to get the intake off. Now that's held on by a bunch of 10mm head bolts, as well as a couple of studs with nuts on them, and then a couple of bolts that hold the shoehorn coming off of the intake on the passenger side. You'll see it. There we go. Okay, just got the intake off. So I was looking down the runners here. You can see some light oily residue, but that's to be expected off of the PCV system. But looking down on the bores, man, like these look really good for a truck with 212,000 miles or 211, whatever it is. They look really good. There was only like one valve with a little bit of buildup on it, but other than that, it looks pretty dang good. Next, we're going to go ahead and try to wrestle this radiator fan shroud as well as the fan out. So the fan is held on by 4 10mm nuts onto a pulley. So we got to go ahead and get a ratcheting wrench in there. We're going to go ahead and make quick work of that. Now you got to be careful when you're taking this fan off because you do not want to let it fall into the radiator. You don't want to bend the fins over on your radiator or anything like that. But it's a lot easier to get the radiator fan as well as the shroud out as one whole piece basically at one time. So we got that. Go ahead and we'll take the mounting screws out for the fan shroud. There we go. There is a couple of hoses over there on the passenger side. You see me working on that. There are hoses holding the fan shroud back right now. So we're kind of unclipping those, getting those out of the way. Trying my best to make light work of this. And it went magically from day to night. So here I am draining some of the water lines. We got to get some of these water lines out of the way before we can pull the shroud out. See, getting the top radiator hose out of the way there. Should be pretty close. Oh, here we go. No. There's the fan, and here comes the shroud. Getting it out of there. Mine was broken, so it fought me a little bit. Make sure you get all those clips off and all that stuff. Go ahead and get our 3/8 ratchet, get that serpentine belt out of the way. Checking the play. We do have more play than preferred on that tensioner pulley. So we're going to go ahead and get a new one of those, I'm pretty sure. Going ahead, breaking the bolts loose on the bracket that holds the tensioner and all that. Took it off prematurely. I will have to put it on later. So, went ahead, got the power steering pump out, alternator off. As you can see, I still need to take a couple more of these brackets off of the front cover. I'm going to have to pull the harmonic balancer, I believe, and whatever that hose is right there, I'm going to have to take that off. I don't know if I got to pull the AC compressor. It's a maybe at this point. I think it's bolted to the front cover there. Yeah. So a few more things to take off, then we can start ripping that thing out. All right, so now there's the remaining hoses on the front. Now this job right here, see that hard line? Get that hard line out of the way there. Now it goes through the cover. Now you see, this is why I totally recommend you guys get some of those long reach needle nose pliers. They come in so handy, and I needed them on this job. You can't hardly see it from the top. You got to go through that little hole in the middle of the timing cover there. So we got that. I watched a few YouTube videos trying to make sure. So next what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and pull my #1 spark plug out. Now the reason for that is we have to find top dead center on cylinder #1. So what that means is that's on the compression stroke. I did not have a compression tester in order to watch whenever the needle spiked. I did have a leak down tester though, which acted the part, and it worked rather well. See, there I am putting that bracket back in. I believe it's because there is a timing mark on that bracket that I needed it to coincide with the harmonic balancer. So here I am rotating around, watching the gauge, trying to watch a spike. Turned it over a few times in order to make sure it was right. Found it, and then went ahead, put my spark plug back in, put the coil back in to protect it, and we're going to move on. So there I am taking that bracket back off. So now here I am trying to get the harmonic balancer off. Earthquake impact from Harbor Freight made quick work of that. Go ahead and get our pry bars, give the harmonic balancer a little wiggle wiggle, came right off. No big deal. Next, we're going to mess with this AC compressor over there on the driver's side. Now, that has 2 bolts at the front that go into the cover, and there's 1 bolt at the back in the middle of that AC compressor. It's back there, and it's kind of a pain to get to, but trust me, you guys got to take it off if you want to get in there and do this timing job. You have to take that AC compressor loose. Also, be sure not to break any of those lines loose. You want to keep your refrigerant in those lines. Here I am taking the alternator, power steering, all that good stuff loose on the passenger side. Not a big deal. Here I am working on the lower 2 bolts. So there's 2 bolts that go through the oil pan into that front timing cover. The one on the right you can take all the way out, but the one on the left you cannot take out unless you jack the engine up. That being said, you do not have to jack the engine up and take it out. It'll unthread pretty much, it'll unthread 100%, but it cannot be taken out of the cover. The cover? No, not the cover, the pan. You cannot pull it through the pan. It's fine, just letting it sit there, and then later on we'll pull the cover forward and then up a little bit. And it'll come off just fine. Here I am taking all the 10mm bolts that hold that front cover on. There are also some 14 mils, maybe a couple of 12s. I can't quite remember, but they were so tight I had to grab a breaker bar, the 14 mils. I had to grab a breaker bar and break those loose. Then the right angle air ratchet made quick work of them for the remaining length of the bolt. So here I am trying to get this cover apart. Now, you see where I'm jamming those screwdrivers in there? Make sure you get an assortment of screwdrivers just in case. But there are voids in between the 2 covers, the front and rear. See where I'm trying to get that in there? That are actual pry spots. They're cast into it, so don't be afraid. That's where you're supposed to pry. You'll see them. There's little gaps in it. So this here is me being a dum-dum. I ended up working on this for a long time. Here I am pulling the covers off. I did not have to pull any of this apart. Those 2 little covers, they did not do anything. That's for the variable valve timing. I just pulled them off. I was trying to see if I was missing anything, which I really was missing something. So here I am working on it. Still failing. I was supposed to pull that idler pulley off. You guys see right there in the front, but I didn't realize it went all the way through. All the instructions I found never mentioned it. So here we are. It's nighttime now, and I'm still struggling with it. So doing a little... See, I got a video pulled up there. Trying to see what I'm doing wrong. The answer is everything. So... here I am. I'm like, oh, light bulb. Let's go ahead and take this off. Look at how much that cover flexed as I pulled it off. Isn't that ridiculous? Now watch. It just nice and easily kind of pops off. And so you pull it forward and then up a little bit, because remember the interference with that little bolt in the pan down below. Last night we made a little bit more progress. Everything appears to be in time. We got this lined up with that mark right there. This cam over here, we got this line marked up with that little nub over there. And then, let's see, we got that mark lined up with that mark, the key lined up with that, and you'll have the dot opposite. See the dot on the right, and there, see it? Okay, so everything appears to be in time. You always want to double check this before you start tearing it apart, but we are going to go ahead and take the tensioners off, and then we're going to pull the chains off. We have to pull all the sprockets off, stuff like that. I got new sprockets. I got a new water pump. Now, some of you guys might be questioning why the heck they would run this like this. There are a lot of engines that do this rather than running it off of the Serpentine Belt. So all of us know that the Serpentine Belt is the easiest way to change a water pump. This is obviously way more involved, but if you throw a Serpentine Belt, or you I don't know, or just something happens, then you'll still be able to possibly drive home without overheating the engine, because it is ran off of the timing, the timing chain, I should say. So that's probably why they engineer it that way, but yeah, that's what it is. So let's see, what else? Okay, I'm probably going to take, so this is the top of our oil pan, as you can see right here. I'm probably going to take some rags or paper towels, kind of stuff them in here, kind of like I did the intake runners. And that way, as I'm scraping all the silicone off, as I'm taking stuff on and off, or blowing stuff off or whatever, I'm not getting a bunch of debris down in my pan that's open to the elements right here. But yeah, all right, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, we're going to pull off the tensioner, get the tension out of that chain so we can take it off everything. There's that, and the top guide, side guide. I went ahead and put the bolt that the guide rides on. It's like a shoulder bolt almost. I went ahead and threaded that back in, which I did a lot. That main gear on the bottom, I did accidentally get the new one kind of stuck on the crank. I ended up having to get my 3-jaw puller, throw the puller on there, pop it back off, because I didn't want to do any damage. I wanted to be real gentle with it. This is a one-time go here, so kind of fit it back on there. A couple little taps with the dead blow hammer, got it on right as rain. Good to go. So here I am. There's 3 10mm bolts that hold that water pump in, a little pry action, and it pops right out. That is double O-rings, so it does have a little bit of issue. You know, it's kind of a tight fit. It's a machined bore with O-rings, you know, and it's double O-rings, so. And just give it a little wiggle, 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 and it should pop out. Come on. Come on. Boy, this is getting long-winded, isn't it? As you can see, so I used a flathead and then turned it in order to pop it out. So went ahead, cleaned it up, got the new one. So put some antifreeze on my finger. You see how I did that? Antifreeze on my finger, went around on the O-rings there in order to provide lubricant. Went ahead and threw it in the hole, bolted it down, torqued it to spec. Good and tight. So here I am trying to figure out how to get these cam gears off, and it is not proving to be very eventful. So as you can see, the cam gear keeps trying to flop over on me. I can't hold it, I can't do anything, and I'm like, oh man. So what's stopping that is literally the valves touching the piston, and I'm like, that's no good. Alright, so I started trying to break these loose, but it just kept trying to jump on me. The tension in the valve springs would rotate it over. So I put it back, I rotated it back to where it was supposed to be,
And as you can see, so these lobes on cylinder number 1 are supposed to be mirroring each other. And I gotta say, for 211,000 miles, man, this thing, it looks pretty dang good. That's not scoring or anything like that. It's just like a discoloration in the cam lobe, but they're good. Like, I feel it with my fingernail. There's no pits or divoting. I know it looks like it on camera, but it's like just a discoloration in the cam lobe. Now I'll be holding the flats with a wrench while I break these loose. So, yep. I just want to take a second to pause and give you guys a little insight that you might find helpful. So I got a full timing kit, so chains, sprockets, all the tensioners, guides, everything, right? New water pump, the whole works. Well, I hate to admit it, but I'm doing this without a book. So I watched a couple YouTube videos, get a couple of tips and stuff like that, but you have your primary tensioners and then your secondary chain tensioners. Now, as you can see, this guy is worn through. I'm guessing that they did not change them the last time, if they did the timing before on this. And as you can see, this guy here is well worn away as well. It's missing some plastic, it's missing some chunks, just like this one here. But okay, when you're removing the front cover, you know, that front cover, you do have to remove the idler pulley, okay? I almost broke the dang cover because I thought that it was just threaded into the cover, but no, it threads all the way through into the back cover or the block. I'm not sure, but anywho, you got to do that. And then once you're in here, in order to change these, you can see that there's these little cap screws right here. Well, this has 2 in there, and there's no way around it. You have to pull the front cap off of the cam. So that means you got to take these 3 bolts out, and because that ties the rear cover to the cam cap. Then on top, you got to pull the bolts out of there, as you know, as well as your solenoid, and then put a screwdriver in here and pop that cap off. Okay, now I'm assuming both sides are exactly the same, and yes, it appears like they are. So yeah, I was trying to do this the easy way, but realized you got to tear apart way more stuff than you thought. You're gonna have to pull the valve cover off of this side as well, and as you can see, there's a lot more going on over here. But yeah, just a couple of tips for any of you guys that are trying to do this. Jesus Christ. So went ahead, pulled that valve cover off. Not too big of a deal, just a bunch of 10mm bolts. So here I am putting the crescent wrench on the flats of that cam and just use the impact to make quick work of it. They both came off very easy, no big deal. So now you kind of pull them together because the chain locks them in. So a little pry action behind them, a little bit more pry action. Here I am checking to see if I missed anything or anything like that, because remember, I'm doing this without a book, so I realize what I gotta do here. There we go, got it. So we also got to get into these, get the front cap off. So 3 bolts on that side, the ones on the bottom, got to pull the solenoid valve off. Made quick work of that. So then we can get the tensioner out. Like I said, those tensioners look like they'd never been changed. And I'm sure the timing had been done at least once, I would think. 215,000 or 13,000, whatever's on it. So go ahead and clean the surfaces up here. There we go. Clean them up real good. I'm going to stuff a paper towel in there in order to scrape the old silicone off. We don't want that down in the valve train or anything like that. So go ahead and keep it nice and neat. Go ahead and scrape that off, prep it, get it ready for some new. Blow it off, make sure it's pretty. So go ahead and clean up the cap too. There's some O-rings in there that we have to swap out. go ahead and put a little RTV on it. Make sure it's the black stuff, that it's safe for oil, direct oil contact. You're going to want to put a little extra in the bottom corner, where my finger is right now, because you definitely need that corner to seal. You have 3 metal surfaces going together there, so you want them to seal. Go ahead. Impact makes short work of those 10 mil bolts. Go ahead and put them in and torque them to spec good and tight. I didn't torque any of those to spec, to be honest. I just kind of used the old clickometer in my hand there. Yep, so here I am. I'm blowing out the hole that runs the VVTI. I think that's what it's called, variable valve timing on that. So here I am putting the new ones on. I got one new gear. The actual cam gear that does the variable valve timing there, you see in my right hand. I did not change that one. Those are very expensive. So go ahead and we're going to put those bolts in. We're going to get the torque wrench out for this. We want to make sure those are torqued to spec. So I actually looked up the torque values on those. I can't remember. I think one was like 80, one was like 30 or 40. I can't remember. But anyways, once again, make short work of it with a crescent wrench, a little cheater bar, and get the torques correct. Everything's set correctly, times correctly. There we go. Now the way you know is there's colored links and all that. I'll cover that in the next video. But yeah, there we go. Put the valve cover back on. Make sure your gasket is in there correct before you do so.
So that wraps up the passenger side of the truck. The driver's side is exactly the same. You just got to move some extra hoses and stuff out of the way in order to get the valve cover off on that side. Everything else is exactly the same. The holding of the cam with the wrench in order to get the cam gears off with the impact, everything is exactly the same. The lining up with the dowel pin is exactly the same, where you can't really screw it up. You just have to make sure that the timing marks are on for the colored link on the chain and the cam gears line up and all that stuff, but I'll cover that in the next video. Down in the comments section, if you guys have any questions or comments or anything like that, things that you want me to go in depth on or anything like that, leave a comment down below. I'll go ahead and make sure to get back to you as soon as I can on that, but go ahead and stick around for the next video. We'll hopefully be wrapping this up. Thanks, guys.